If you haven't guessed it by now, Holo is a little bit of a manipulator. And I don't know why Lawrence tries to act like he's not going to give in to it. I guess he has to do a little bit of pushback so she doesn't get too crazy, but every single time he folds. Every single time he folds. All she has to do is just hug onto his arm and look up at him with the puppy eyes. But yeah, episode 7, Spice and Wolf, definitely a solid episode. I will admit that, yeah, it's a little bit of a cool down from the crazy stuff that happened in the previous episodes. Just having a little bit of a trade. And it seems like a lot of setup for Ruben Haagen, because that's obviously the next place they're going to. So they're, I guess, establishing a lot of lore. And yes, introducing Norah, which I'm guessing is who they're calling the sorcerer. I'm guessing, because everybody's mentioning that it's a sorcerer and that they can control the wolves. We've seen her controlling the wolves at the very beginning. So, and obviously something that Holo doesn't like. It's like that whole thing of like, oh, it's not a sorcerer, it's a shepherd. I'm like, no, Holo probably hates shepherds. She probably really, really hates shepherds. But yes, let's jump into the episode proper. I kind of have it broken up here. Obviously, again, a lot of the emphasis in this episode is around the city of Ruben Haagen. They've mentioned the fact that it was a place that was founded by, yes, the Holy Crusader, Ruben Haagen. Very interesting to have Holo say, yeah, I recognize that name, but it was a person. A person with red hair and a red beard. And additionally, yeah, he still had his arm when he left me. I just bit his butt. Like this heroic tale of him fighting this pagan god, and it took his arm. Oh yeah, they probably wouldn't want to write in the history books that all she did was bite his butt. This idea that, yeah, he insulted her cute ears and tail, so she bit him in the butt. But what I did find interesting about this whole like segment was how much emphasis they put in how Holo is trying to tell him, I didn't kill him. Just so you know, I never killed him. I didn't end his life. It's very important. And it was kind of one of those things of like, yeah, it's something that she as this wise wolf wants to establish as like knowledge of her. But no, she's following Lawrence. It seems like specifically she doesn't care what other people think. She cares what Lawrence thinks. And it makes sense because they've had a discussion before about how the fact that he has been chased down by wolves, seen people killed by wolves. And so it's kind of a sore spot for him. So it's almost like she's trying to make sure that he knows I'm not them. I never killed this person, don't fear me or something like that. She doesn't want his impression of her to change. So it's a really cool thing. So, and yes, it makes sense because if there was legends made about him, they named a town after him, he survived. They talked about him just losing an arm, but he probably lost a butt cheek. He probably lost a butt cheek instead. I kind of wonder that aspect of like, yeah, technically they're like, yeah, he's got one butt cheek short. Let's just talk about his arm. Yeah, let's say he lost his arm. That's much better. Let's alter the textbooks. It's one of those rare cases where the history is not wrote by the victors because she didn't get to write the fact that she bit him in the butt. But yeah, I like a lot of the stuff in this episode was like her manipulation, talking about the pickled apples, and she's like, you're gonna buy it from me, right? You're gonna buy it from me. Well, they're really expensive. Only rich people and nobles can buy them, but you're gonna buy it from me, right? I need oil from the next town. Yeah, money's not good. You still have to pay me back, but I'm gonna pay you back eventually. Can you buy me the oil? Okay, thank you. But yeah, it was a little bit heartbreaking in there because he's obviously, again, pushing back on the idea that she wants to buy this, buy that, buy this. And yes, the fact that she wants to buy food all the time. He's like, we go bankrupt if I bought you food all the time. We have to conserve our money. And yeah, technically bringing up the fact that she owes him money as well. And it's kind of sad because at some point, you almost think that she's tricking him by getting into the fact that she's like, yeah, I'll pay you back eventually. I'm not going to, run off on you. I need to do it quickly. That way I can get to the north. And he's having to kind of pivot and go, no, don't worry about it. There's no time limit here. Just pay me off before we get to the north. And so again, it's like one of those moments where is she manipulating him because she wants the oil? Or is she actually feeling like he's bringing it up a lot and it kind of hurts her? It's an oddity because yes, at the very end, she pivots again and says, hey, yeah, you're going to buy the oil, right? So buy me the oil, right? It is a sad thing because I think the phrase that hurts the most in that conversation is her specifically saying, I have to pay you off, otherwise I won't be free. And yes, that is technically a mindset for a setting like this. If you owe somebody a lot of money, you're sort of in their servitude. It's like a non-contract servitude or forced servitude there. Until you pay that off, you're essentially owned by the person. And I think that might be something that's actually weighing on her heart. So again, it's like, it's a heartbreaking thing, but at the same time, because it's Holo, she does technically do this a lot to manipulate him. Yeah, that's when we get into the actual trade that happened, which I do remember this one, them going down to this one location, checking the pepper, how much it weighs, and yes, her acting like you spiked the water, I feel dizzy. Oh no, I spilled my water. Oh man. And then Lawrence following it up with, yeah, I must be tipsy too. I'm sure I'll forget about this whole situation if you give me double credit, if you get me some armor, if you reweigh, all this kind of stuff, just kind of manipulating the guy after she does her little kind of step in there, which honestly, that one was probably the oddest for me because I could see that being something that somebody would check. That is one of those one cases where I'm like, it's kind of odd that Lawrence doesn't have some way of checking it. I would see a person of Lawrence's status, which he is dropping things like, I'm a believer in God, which that usually kind of instills upon them that you're not going to swindle them because you are of the faith, you're of the church. But at the same time, the guy still does this whole tactic of essentially weighing it in a way that the scale is going to be tipped because of the unleveledness of, I believe, the table, not necessarily the ground, because it doesn't really keep moving. But it's one of those things of like, as a trader that regularly uses scales, you would think Lawrence would have at least a weight scale, something to prove that whatever weight they're using is proper. And yes, do something as simple as put a cup of water on the table and see which direction it's leaning. Because that seemed like a massive dip that table's doing. It's an oddity there, but still, anyways. It worked out to their favor, though, because if he would have gotten a proper deal, he wouldn't have been able to manipulate the guy into getting extra credit and doubling up on his goods that he can trade into the next place and everything. It was interesting how they got into the armor itself and gold. I think those tidbits are kind of the interesting aspect of how much this writer gets into the trade and everything. Yes, this armor, it actually has a lot of value in this other town because this is where the Crusades go out. This is where they chase down heretics and stuff like that. They're Crusades they go out with. And it's more of an idea that it's like a guaranteed sell, not necessarily that it's a high profit thing because there's so many of them. But this kind of brought the conversation about, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And the gold and silver part, yes, is something I could totally see being a thing. That unless you're in with the church, you're going to get tariffed like crazy. Like the sale of gold and silver being so profitable, yeah, I can see them sort of, unfortunately, because of what he said before about the fact that they're willing to fill their pockets, the church in this place is willing to fill their pockets, it does make sense that they probably have certain individuals that they're buddy-buddy with, that they'll allow those people to come in with the least tariffs. That kind of allows them to corner the market. It is even worse in the idea that they actually have this whole sealing process from the church to make it sacred gold, and how they're using that basically to get even more profit. And so yeah, it's scummy. And it's technically something that happens on a regular basis. Those certain people that get, I mean, that goes into the previous episode and that whole situation, the privileges, these things that allow them to get some sort of benefit. Which, speaking of that, and I don't recall this from the last time I watched it, the last adaptation or the book, but yeah, they sort of did hint at something happening with the home village that Holo is from. As Lawrence was coming out, he sees this guy that's talking about this town over there that worship this pagan god. Yeah, it said something like they worship a pagan god, and it like just silences, and then Lawrence has a face. I don't know if they're implying there that something happened to that hometown where Yare was at, or if that was just him hearing the word that this wolf pagan god is from that town and maybe somewhere else. That's the question mark. It could either be implying that something happened in the village, or word got out from the village that this Holo, this pagan god, this wolf, has left. And so to keep an eye out for it, which would technically, yes, make it more difficult for them in the future if that word is spreading that Holo is there, and people will be more, apt to notice her if she were to reveal her ears or whatever. So that's interesting. Yeah, other than that, a lot of mentions of this sorcerer. Again, they mentioned the idea that they were able to control wolves and that they were basically captured by the church, but they were forgiven. And again, sort of implies it's this Norah girl, which I know her name already, but this girl, this shepherd that they end up running into. I do like the fact that when they get to this one point, they talk about these mercenaries coming down, and so they're going to take a side route. And I like the fact that Holo's like, yeah, I don't have a good experience with mercenaries, so I'd rather deal with the wolves. Those would be easier. It's kind of one of those things where Lawrence just goes, shrug, okay, so you can handle it then. It's like this little nicety that Lawrence has now that he's traveling with Holo, is that he doesn't have to worry about wolves anymore. So yeah, let's just take the side route. Who cares about the wolves? She can handle it perfectly fine. And then, like I said, eventually running into the shepherd and doing a call out for her to find out that she's not a sorcerer, she's a shepherd. Again, I kind of assume it's going to be both. That, again, because she's able to use this horn, it kind of shoos the wolves away. People see that as sort of some black magic or something like that, some sorcery that she's able to do that keeps the wolves away. But again, yes, the moment that she opens up her hood and she looks gorgeous and Lawrence responds to it, yep, Holo's not liking it. Holo's like, oh, damn it. She's like the type that I hate. A female is not the fact that she's a shepherd, it's the fact that she's a female and she's going to take away Lawrence. Anyways, well, yeah, that's definitely gonna be interesting. Again, I seem to remember a little bit of Norah's story, so I'm hoping that they really nail it with this adaptation, but we'll see. But that's my thoughts on episode 6, of 7 of Spice and Wolf. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get my content. I did news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips links, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does, and y'all take care.